I wanted to start doing this because I have a habit of creating new projects that I never finish, and sometimes create promo videos and things like that for them. But a lot of times I never show like the guts of what I'm doing, and there's a lot of stuff that I end up doing that I think is really cool and things I want to show off to people, but it just, never comes to fruition. So I wanted to do this to discuss previous projects that I know are going to ultimately be abandoned. So this first video is going to talk about a nuclear apocalypse game that I was trying to create, and then another multiplayer game called Turf that I built from ideas of the nuclear apocalypse simulator game. So I guess first we'll talk about the nuclear apocalypse game. The original idea behind this game was that you were the survivor of a mutually assured destruction level event, and I wanted to showcase the immediate aftermath up to maybe a few years after it occurs, and I wanted to show like the kinds of struggles and interpersonal relationships that you would have with other survivors, while demonstrating, I guess, how awful such an experience would actually be. Some of the things that I thought were pretty cool about this game was that, first off, all the first person hands animations were completely procedurally generated. So what that means is that instead of having a traditional animation for reloading or firing or whatever, basically for each phase you're setting parameters as to where you want them to be, rotation angles and all that stuff, which would ultimately make it really easy to have different weapon types like shotguns or rocket launchers, things like that. Some other stuff that I thought was cool was there was a whole gameplay system where if you shot somebody in the head, they died. And every other body part basically had a kind of a different reaction. You'd sort of gradually bleed out if you got like body hits and stuff like that. But you could shoot the gun out of somebody's hand, or you could basically immobilize them by shooting them in the legs. It was really fun, and I thought that that was going to be a really cool multiplayer feature, which then led me to do all the multiplayer replication stuff. So the game was also totally replicated. So where this game started to kind of go off the rails was I really wanted it to focus on single player missions and have like really deep and rich storylines with a whole bunch of different characters and things like that. But it really started to kind of take off in a multiplayer direction. I also didn't really want it to be violent for the sake of violence, which it was also turning into. And thirdly, I didn't want you to end up being like this hero figure in a post-apocalyptic nightmare. I wanted it to show how bad it would actually be, not to make you feel like an action hero. So those were kind of the reasons why I ended up abandoning the project. Turf arose out of my disillusionment for the post-apocalypse game. I wanted a game that was purposefully multiplayer, utilized the systems that I had built in Turf, but was more focused on just the multiplayer aspects and just being chaotic without having to worry about storylines or anything like that. The idea of the game was basically that rival gangs would occupy territory by going into those territories, committing crimes like robbing banks and selling drugs and stuff until they were able to claim it. A couple key takeaways from Turf were that a lot of the animations and stuff were custom made. They were very simple, but they were designed to work with procedural systems. So I thought that was cool and something I would like to explore more in the future. The other thing that I did was everything was kind of built off of C++, which that's the first time I did this. Normally, I will do everything in blueprints, and if I do anything with C++, it'll be porting it, which this is not how I did it. I did it starting with C++ and then built things in Blueprint on top of that. Some of the reasons that I decided to stop working on Turf were partly because some of the procedural animation stuff started to just get way out of hand. It wasn't working correctly. Things just, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get them to work right. Another aspect was that building things in C++ and being the first time that I've done that, just my organizational skills are not where they need to be, and that'll come with time. Eventually, I'll figure out better workflows for organizing my files and things like that. But for right now, it was just becoming a mess. And then the third one was just because it dealt with gangs and things like that. I didn't want it to come off as racially insensitive, even though I wasn't really doing anything in regards to race. But I do think, there is it is kind of still a sensitive topic when it comes to things like gentrification and stuff like that. So I just kind of decided that it just wasn't worth pursuing. So I hope you like my little walkthrough of some games that I started and will never finish. I got probably a couple more that I could do stuff like this with. So if you like this, then hit that like and subscribe button. But I would really like to do some videos of things that I'm working on and will finish, because that would be much more impressive. Anyway, catch you all in the next one.